So today we're going to be talking about erosional features, but more specifically from rivers. What is river erosion? River erosion is the process where moving water carries or wears away rock and soil, transporting it downstream. Rivers might seem calm, but over time they're powerful enough to carve valleys, shape landscapes, and completely transform the earth through erosion. How erosion works. The three main ways rivers erode land is hydraulic action, abrasion, and solution. So action is the force of the water. The fast-moving water crashes into the riverbank and the bed and forces the rocks to break apart. The air gets trapped in the cracks and the pressure builds and then the rocks break, as you can see in this photo right here to the left. And then abrasion is the rocks and the sediment getting carried by the river and then grind against surfaces as like the floor or the side of the riverbed. This slowly wears down the rocks in the riverbed itself and banks. And then this what comes from abrasion is the solution. The solution is the minerals that have dissolved in the water, especially like if it's slightly acidic water, it dissolves it faster. This is common in more rocks such as limestone because they're super easy to dissolve. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about the stages of erosion. So the upper course stage, which is also called the early or youthful stage. This is a steep slope. It has fast moving water, which is obviously like white water rapids mainly. Um, it's mainly caused by vertical erosion and it cuts straight downwards rather than at a slope. This forms V-shaped valleys and as you can see on the right-hand photo. The next course is the middle course, which is the mature stage. This slope, it becomes gentler as it erodes. The lateral erosion increases, meaning it gets wider and it erodes sideways. This usually forms meanders and river cliffs. As the rivers go lateral, it transports all the runoff and sediment to the bottom of the river. The last stage and the late stage, or the old stage, is the lower course. This is the very gentle. There's no slope. There's no slope or not a slope that is not as steep. There's lots of deposition and sediment because everything has eroded basically, causing it to become flat. This forms wide valleys and large bends. Okay, so now that we've reviewed erosion, now let's get into the main features of erosion. So, the first main feature of erosion is the V-shaped valleys. It's often weathering loose rock on the valley sides, which falls into the river and gets carried away. This river mainly erodes downwards, and they're very narrow and steep and kind of form like a V shape, like you can see in the right-hand photo. These are often found in mountainous areas like Colorado. Okay, the next feature is canyons. These canyons develop over millions of years and are continuous vertical erosion. This reveals layers of rock that are gradually cut deeper and deeper. These often form from in dry areas where the location has little vegetation and is very slow to erode. These often look like very deep valleys with steep, often cliff-like sides and are much larger and more dramatic than a V. For example, this is the Grand Canyon and it's carved by the Colorado River. The next one is waterfalls, which occurs where hard rock sits on top of softer rock. Then this softer rock erodes faster due to the rivers and creating sort of a drop. Over time, the falling rock erodes the rock on the bottom, creating sort of a plunge pool, which is seen in the right-hand photo. What happens over time is the waterfall retreats back upstream and leaves behind sort of a steep valley or a gorge. The second to last feature is meanders. Water flows faster. This is where water flows faster around the outside of the bends, causing erosion, and then the slower water on the inside leads to deposition. These often look like wide looping curves in the river, and an example of this is like the Mississippi River that has large visible meanders. Okay, so the last of these features are cut banks. These are a feature found on the outside of meanders. This is where the fast water hits the edge, which causes it to erode, making this bank, making kind of a steep wall. These often look like sharp, exposed edges along the river. Each one of these features forms because the rivers are constantly eroding the land, either cutting down, widening, or even shifting direction over time. And that's all the features from rivers.